Former President of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, met with Jorge Calix to address the political crisis in the Central American country. During their encounter, a deal to preserve peace and fairness in Congress was struck. The United Nations Security Council discussed humanitarian consequences of imposing unilateral sanctions on countries amid COVID-19 pandemic this Monday. The African Union decided on Sunday to suspend the decision to grant observer status to Israel. The decision was taken at the 35th summit of the bloc held in Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. The former president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, met with Jorge Calix to address the political crisis in the Central American country. During their encounter, a deal to preserve peace and fairness in Congress was struck. The signing of an agreement concerning the new formation of several bodies of the government was seen as one that aims to preserve unity above differences by the ex-dignitary Manuel Zelaya, now general coordinator of the Libre Party. Calix committed to resigning his post as head of Congress, so in his stead Luis Redondo can assume office as agreed upon by Presidents Xiomara Castro's and Salvador Nasrallah's allied parties during their campaign. This presents itself with a condition that the Libre Party now reinstate those members of parliament formerly among the organization's rank who opposed Redondo's presidency of Congress by appointing Calix. From Honduras, Hilda Silvestrucci reports on the meeting taken by former President Zelaya to sort out the political crisis that has divided the nation's Congress.
Very good afternoon. An agreement has been reached in the political crisis that existed in the National Congress of Honduras, where there were two boards, one represented by Mr. Luis Redondo and the other represented by Mr. Jorge Calix. The deputy of the Freedom and Refundation Party and the rest of the deputies who were on this board of directors have already stepped aside and are now handing over the head of the National Congress of Honduras to Mr. Luis Redondo. Therefore, with this agreement is sealed that they are only requesting their statement to the Freedom and Refundation Party, since they had been expelled by the Free Party from that political institution, and now they will return to that instance that has witnessed their development as Honduran politicians.
Let's take our focus now in Costa Rica, as the turnout was redefined after the candidate for the Social Democratic Progress Party, Rodrigo Chavez, surpassed Fabricio Alvarado of the New Republic Party for the second place. On April 3rd, Chavez and Jose Maria Figueres of the National Liberation Party will face each other in the contest to decide the nation's president for the next 4 years. With 88.20% of the votes counted as per the latest official tally, Figueres leads the electoral race with 27.26%. Following the latest report, electoral authorities announced that abstentionism dropped from 44.1% to 40.29%, which might seem a high number, but still represents a record for general elections since 1953. And President Alberto Fernandez arrived in Barbados on Monday. This country is the last destination of his official tour after he attended China and Russia. The Argentine head of state is scheduled to meet with Prime Minister Mia Mottley on Tuesday. Fernandez arrived in the Caribbean nation this Monday afternoon. His meeting with Mottley is set for Tuesday morning. The encounter will address issues such as climate crisis and the way in which the island gained independence from the United Kingdom. Also on Tuesday, the president will meet representatives of countries that make up the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, after which his return to Buenos Aires is planned. Before leaving China, Fernandez held a meeting with Xi Jinping at the Great People's Palace in Beijing. There, the Asian and Latin American dignitaries agreed to strengthen political, commercial, economic, scientific, and cultural cooperation and signed agreements that will involve financing for investments and works for more than $23.7 billion in Argentina. Now, on February 7th, the people of Grenada celebrate a new anniversary of their independence obtained in 1974 after more than 3 centuries of occupation by France and the United Kingdom. The island of Grenada became more important for the European traders when, in addition to the traditional sugar crops, nutmeg, cocoa, and cotton plantations were incorporated. In the second half of the 20th century, the first metal workers' union organized, which led the first strikes for labor demands, where incipient demonstrations in favor of an independence process also arose. Then the revolutionary leader Maurice Bishop initiated a broad process of socialist reforms. Although still belonging to the British Commonwealth of Nations, Grenada has in recent years moved closer to the platforms of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America, ALBA, and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, welcome back to From the South. The United Nations Security Council discussed humanitarian consequences of imposing unilateral sanctions on countries amid the COVID-19 pandemic this Monday. According to organizers, the meeting is one of the key events structured this month in the Council under the chairmanship of Russia, a country that has repeatedly opposed unilateral sanctions and coercive measures. Since the beginning of the pandemic, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the suspension of unilateral sanctions imposed on several states, which hinder the fight against COVID-19 and impede the promotion and enjoyment of all human rights. Sanctioned territories such as Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, and Iran are unable to obtain essential services in the midst of the pandemic, including medicines, food, electricity, water, and fuel. And Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday hailed France's efforts to strengthen European security as he hosted French leader Emmanuel Macron for talks.
I see how much effort the current leadership of France and personally the French president is making to resolve the crisis related to ensuring equal security in Europe with a serious historical perspective and to resolve issues that are related with it, namely the resolution of the internal Ukrainian crisis in the southeast of the country.
On the other hand, French President Emmanuel Macron told his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin that he hoped talks in Moscow could lead to an easing of tensions over Ukraine.
The discussion today, in my view, can begin to move towards what we need to do, which is de-escalation, the terms of which we know, the military situation, the Ukrainian question, the importance of which you have reminded us, and the Normandy model, the security situation in Belarus and in the whole region, and the major issues of collective security that we are going to discuss. So I am delighted to have the opportunity to go deep into all these subjects and to start building a useful response collectively for Russia and for the rest of Europe. A useful response is one that obviously makes it possible to avoid war and to build elements of trust, stability, and visibility for everyone.
The Russian government announced that the West is preparing provocations to fuel the conflict between Moscow and Kiev. Russian Foreign Minister Maria Zakharova said on Monday that the West is trying to prepare the media space for a series of major provocations, including military ones, linked to an alleged attack on Ukraine. In this sense, it is further evidence that the NATO countries led by the Anglo-Saxons are escalating the tensions around Ukraine. Moscow urged London to abandon provocative actions and stop spreading nonsense. Russian Foreign Minister Zakharova also said that both publications were denied by the foreign ministries of Russia and China. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said on Sunday he would respond to Ukraine together with Russia if it was to cause a war in Donbass. In a national media interview, the president was asked about a potential offensive by Ukraine against regions bordering his country, to which he replied that he would respond in the same way as Russia and warned that if Ukraine started a war against Minsk, it would suspend all supplies of fuel and lubricants as well as electricity. During the interview, Lukashenko held Western countries, especially the United States, responsible for leading Kiev into a war. In Canada, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson declared a state of emergency in his city in the face of ongoing protests that have overwhelmed the local resources and strained the faith of local residents hoping for an end to the situation. In a brief release, the mayor said that the decision reflected the serious danger and threat to the safety and security of residents from protesters encamped throughout much of the downtown core. The move gives the city some flexibility to more quickly procure supplies, some of which the brief release noted could help purchase equipment required by frontline workers and first responders. Watson's declarations marked the end of the second weekend of the Freedom Convoy, taking over much of the capital's downtown center, with trucks clogging streets and protesters occupying sidewalks in front of Parliament Hill and into nearby residential areas. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced on Monday the country will reopen its borders to tourists from February 21st, ending some of the world's strictest and longest-running pandemic travel restrictions. After a meeting with the National Security Cabinet, Morrison said the borders will reopen to all visa holders and those double vaccinated. Australia's borders slammed shut in March 2020 in the hope of protecting the island continent against a surging global pandemic. For most of the time since then, Australians have been barred from leaving, and only a handful of visitors have been granted exemptions to enter. The rules have stranded nationals overseas, split families, and hammered the country's multi-billion-dollar tourist industry. According to the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, every month of border closures has cost businesses an estimated $2.6 billion. Now, Chile began administering a fourth dose of COVID-19 vaccine for its population over 55 years of age. Until then, the fourth dose was reserved since January 10th to immunocompromised persons, healthcare workers, and elderly people in nursing homes. Of the 18.9 million people aged 3 years and older, only 2.1% have so far received the fourth dose. A total of 89.6% completed their basic vaccination schedule with a one dose or a double shot, and 73.9% received the third or booster dose. So far, the country has purchased 51.5 million doses from Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, CanSino, Sputnik, and Janssen. The country began this fourth dose process in the midst of a wave of contagions with record daily figures of over 30,000 confirmed cases. Although the high vaccination rate helps to ensure that most cases are mild and do not result in hospitalization or death. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The African Union decided on Sunday to suspend the decision to grant observer status to Israel. The decision was taken at the 35th summit of the bloc held in Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia. Last July, the president of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, agreed to grant Israel observer status in the 55-member body, but the proposal was rejected in many African countries in a move pushed by Algeria. In response to the decision, the conference decided to form a committee composed of 7 heads of state who have been tasked with reviewing the situation. Sudanese security forces fired tear gas on Monday at thousands of demonstrators calling for civilian rule and justice for protesters killed since last year's coup. The tear gas was fired as demonstrators were heading towards the presidential palace in the capital Khartoum in the latest rally against the October coup led by the army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Regular mass protests have been held since the coup, which derailed Sudan's rocky transition to civilian rule following the 2019 ouster of President Omar al-Bashir. At least 79 people have been killed and hundreds injured in the crackdown on anti-coup demonstrations. Monday's protests took place despite heavy security presence. It came only 2 days after thousands of pro-military demonstrators rallied against recent United Nations talks that aim to help resolve the political crisis.
We took to the streets today to keep up the movement against the military coup. We will continue our demands. They are clear. No negotiation, no partnership, no legitimacy. We will continue until the regime falls. There is no way for the Sudanese to fight this coup regardless of whatever it costs. This has been happening for more than 100 days and we will continue no matter the cost.
The head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, voiced grave concern over the situation of disappeared women activists in the country. The UN envoy has delivered this message of concern to Afghanistan's interim Deputy Prime Minister for Political Affairs, Abdul Kabir. The UN mission in the country stated that during the meeting, the country's interim premier committed to seek answers and gave an update soon. The mission also reaffirmed that world support to Afghanistan is eroded without respect for all Afghans' rights. This came after media reports stated that the Taliban arrested 2 women activists in Kabul on Thursday. Recently, women activists who were voicing for their rights in the capital city started disappearing in the past few months. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman said on Monday that his country is focusing on getting economic benefits out of the nuclear deal which world powers have been attempting to salvage in talks in Vienna.
Our focus is mainly on the Islamic Republic of Iran and our people benefiting economically from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. There has been no action in this regard. The United States has decided to take some steps in an area of its own interest. While we are watching closely any action in the right direction, those steps are not worth taking seriously. The Islamic Republic of Iran expects that necessary decisions have been made by other parties, especially in Washington. The issue of removal of sanctions and Iran benefiting from economic aspects of this comprehensive plan of action is a key issue and Iran's red line.
China urged the United States to take the right step towards the Iran nuclear issue by waiving sanctions on Iran's civilian nuclear programs and overhauling its erroneous policy.
China welcomes the U.S.'s decision to waive sanctions on Iran's civilian nuclear program and believes that it is a step in the right direction. The talks on resuming compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action are currently at a crucial juncture. As the culprit of the Iranian nuclear crisis, the U.S. should completely correct its wrong policy of maximum pressure on Iran and lift all illegal sanctions on Iran and third parties. On this basis, the Iranian side should resume full compliance.
The government of China strengthened bilateral relations with several countries participating in the opening of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games. More than 30 leaders from various countries and international organizations took part in the opening of the Olympic Games on Friday, February 4th, including UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the leaders of the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Ecuador, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Egypt, Turkmenistan, among others. The Chinese president held meetings with these personalities and they agreed to strengthen bilateral cooperation ties. These leaders also agreed to work together to confront the COVID-19 pandemic, to defend multilateralism, and to reject the policies of the international pressure and sanctions. We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.